Arkansas.
What?
Yeah,
Magnolia, Arkansas?
yeah,
Why?
that's where I live for
You
now.
live in Magnolia?
Yeah,
Awesome.
we go to Little Rock a few times a year. My husband has meetings there, and we love it. So I know you grew up there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I know but I know every town in Arkansas because when I was 13 years old, I got a job at the Arkansas Democrat
Right.
and in the sports department, and I was in charge of high school football. And so I learned every single town that has a high school football team. And
Yeah.
and on Friday nights I would have to um, call up the coaches and get the info on the games. And
Wow.
so yeah, so I know
Yeah.
all about Magnolia.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, my husband's had to drive all over Arkansas and didn't know it before. So yeah, we've been all over. I've been up to Mountain Home and Fayetteville and all over the place.
Yeah,
So, well, thanks for being here today.
sure.
My husband and I are actually huge fans of yours since the 90s.
Wow,
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
well, you're welcome. A friend of ours gave us one of your books. Joe Bob Goes Back to the Drive-In,
Yeah,
and then we subscribed to your newsletter, the Joe Bob Report. So
you know about that? That's
yeah,
like,
we
oh, that goes way back.
it
Yeah,
does. I think we still have them. I put them in an album or something, or what do you call it?
a
It's
binder. Yeah.
somewhere. So we really love reading your writing, and I actually didn't watch your show because we didn't have that channel. So
You didn't have oh, the movie channel,
yeah,
right?
yeah, back then,
Yeah.
yeah. And do you
It
remember
was,
you had a movie review club, and you sent around VHS copies of
yes.
movies, and then we would write review and then send the videotape to the next person on the list. I did that.
Which committee were you on?
I don't remember. It was a
Really?
long
Okay.
time ago. I never got my reviews published in your newsletter, but that's okay. I
Well,
just
that's because
didn't.
we had too many log jammers who would get
Oh,
the VHS and never review it,
I'll bet.
never look at it, and then the next person would be waiting and waiting and waiting on it.
Yeah,
So so the system eventually broke down
I'm
from
sure.
from negligence.
But it's pre-Netflix, so it was great. I loved it.
Great.
So, congratulations on getting your show picked up for season 6.
Yeah. I thought we were going to be doing this one time in 2018, and here we are. Um, we've done something like 180 movies or something. I don't,
Wow.
we've gone over the top with this thing.
So, is it still exciting at this point in your career to get your show
Oh,
renewed?
it's so much fun. It's so much fun. I've been the luckiest guy in the world in TV because I've had 3 shows, and none of my shows have ever had time limits.
Mm,
There's nobody else that works in TV who can say that.
that's probably true.
It's
Yeah.
like, when I was at the movie channel, it was a premium channel. The movie channel was the 4th premium channel in
Right.
terms of number of subscribers. It's like everybody had HBO, and then most people had HBO and Showtime. And then if you wanted a 3rd channel, you bought Cinemax.
Right.
And then if you really, really needed more movies in your life, if you just had to have a 4th premium channel, you bought the movie channel. And that's probably why it wasn't, available where you were. And so I was always the late night guy. And so they didn't care how long I talked,
Wow.
because it was the end of the day's schedule. And then when I went to TNT, I was also the late night guy, and they said to me, it was usually a double feature, and it didn't have a start time, it didn't have an end time, because it would come on after basketball or or something that ended at a weird time, and then they would just say, as long as you're done by 6 a.m., we don't care. You can finish at 4, you can finish at 5, we don't care. We'll just put Three Stooges in up till 6 a.m. And then, and so, and so I never had any time limits at either of those shows. And then I go to a streaming network, and it's
Right.
like, oh,
Yeah.
well, no time limits. Okay, this is great. This
Yeah,
is
I
great.
think your show's made for streaming, really.
I know. I mean, it's like when we did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I said to my producer, I said, this is my favorite movie. And he says, yeah, that's why we're showing it. And I said, well, you know, I may have to talk like a long time. And he says, as long as you want to talk. So the interruptions, the time on the interruptions is longer than the movie. However, and I'm not proud of that. That's not a good thing. But enough people have continued to watch that thing and watch it and watch it and watch it over and over again that I guess, occasionally you can get away with that. But
Yes, oh,
but
well.
that's really the tail wagging the dog. And so Shudder let me do that, and I'm grateful for that.
So you can go back and watch older episodes of your show, like go watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one on there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
They keep the library. I mean,
right.
sometimes they lose the rights to the movie,
Ah,
but they have but most of the movies are still on there, and then they have a section. If they do lose the rights, they have a section called Just Joe Bob, where if you're really nerdy, you can watch the intro and the breaks, and we tell you the time code at the break. So if you wanted to sync it up with the movie, you could. It's kind
that's
of like a Rip Tracks thing, but without talking over the movie.
right.
And
Well,
and so that is available, and people do watch those,
I'm sure you got
especially
lots of
people in
fans.
well, a lot of times, Shudder is available in Canada, England, um, Australia, and New Zealand, but
Wow.
a lot of times we don't have the rights to the movie in those
Right.
countries, but they still have the Just Joe Bobs, and so the really hardcore fans will go and sync it up with the Just Joe Bobs and watch it anyway. But
Wow.
uh, so
That's cool. I might have to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I've never seen that.
you've
Because
never seen it?
yeah, I'm actually not a horror fan. I like you,
No?
and I like low budget movies. I don't like I don't mind the Showtime blood for Dexter here, but I don't, I'm sort of squeamish and I don't like really gross things. So it's terrible. I know. I don't mind spooky or scary. Not too keen on the, splatter and gore and vomit and
Okay.
all the
Well,
gross.
well, we have horror for all tastes. Every
Good,
subgenre in the world
good.
is part of the Shudder library.
Cool. I have watched a few things on Shudder before. So, but anyway, so October is a big month for you and for Shudder. You have a Halloween special in 2 days, and the description says that you, quote, celebrate the spooky season in style with a demonic double feature sure to get your blood pumping and one very scary special guest, unquote. Can you tell me more about that?
I can tell you everything except um, the titles of the movies, because we don't reveal the titles of the movies in advance.
Okay.
And what I did is I turned over the planning for this year's Halloween to Darcy the mail girl, because she complains every year that I screw up the Halloween show. And so I said, okay, you do it. And so she's planning the decorations and the stunts and the guests. And I didn't know who the guest was going to be until I noticed that Danhausen, you know who that is? You know who Danhausen is?
No.
Danhausen is a wrestler for AEW who dresses up in monster makeup,
Mhm.
uh, and and says he's a demon. And so he's a professional wrestler who says he's a demon. And so he's kind of started tweeting about, or what do you call it, Xing, about uh, what he's going to be doing this Friday night. And so I've kind of surmised that Danhausen may be the special spooky guest.
Ah,
So,
the cat's out
but
of
that's
the
Darcy's doing, yeah.
bag.
Um, I've met Danhausen a couple times, and he's a he's a great guy, very strange man. You know, his slogan is "I'm very nice and very evil."
That's funny. That's funny. So how far in advance do you write, if that's what you do, and shoot the show?
I try to, as soon as they'll give me the titles, I start doing deep research on the movies because the fans demand it. I mean, if I don't, by the time the movie airs, even if it's a movie I've seen many times, I watch it again and then I seek out, additional information about it because the fans want to know everything. They want to know every single thing
Sure.
about the making of the movie, the the box office of the movie, which is actually a hard thing to find because people lie so much about box office. And
Yeah.
if it's the fans love the 80s for some reason. They
Yeah.
love the 80s and they especially love the 80s slashers.
Sure. Yeah.
So if it's an 80s slasher, you got to really know your stuff. Um, and but we've shown a lot of, I mean, uh, I think one of the most difficult research movies I've ever done is The Exorcist 3,
Hmm.
because the guy who, William Peter Blatty, who wrote the Exorcist stories,
Mhm.
was, was he was a Catholic intellectual, and he had all these theories about life, religion, God, and the devil, and exorcism. And so I just got lost in this morass of stuff about William Peter Blatty and why certain symbolism is in the movie and all that. And I tried to explain it. I mean, I didn't have time to explain all of it, but tried to explain it when we presented the movie. But I just remember reading article after article about about what Blatty may be trying to do in Exorcist 3. Plus, it was a troubled movie. It was one of those movies where they screwed it up and they had to go back and do reshoots, and they, brought in a new actor at the very end to do the
Right.
actual exorcism, and then the special effects didn't work and they had to reshoot those. And so there was all this stuff, and somehow we got it all in there. But
Well, that's
it
what
was,
happens when they give you unlimited time. You can put it as much as you
I
want.
know, right? I know, right? You can't skimp on a movie like that.
No.
Um, I mean, the Prowler, no problem. You don't really need that much time to research the Prowler, but um, or another one we kind of rescued from obscurity this movie called Demon Wind that was made really at the end of the slasher era.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just so weird that it was hard to find information on it. But we showed it. It's impossible to describe and really impossible to understand. I don't really think anybody could summarize the plot accurately. But I noticed about 6 months after we showed it, it started turning up on midnight shows in
Huh.
theaters all across the
Huh.
country. And so I'm like, okay, well, we revived the fortunes of that guy. And so,
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. No, I know what you mean about doing research on trying to find ratings and box office and stuff like that. Yesterday I was trying to find some ratings for some shows in the 70s, and that wasn't, I mean, it was a long time ago, but you'd think you could find it. I couldn't find it. Just
really,
like certain
yeah, I
years, certain
mean,
shows, it's like impossible.
yeah, and I kind of penalize myself because I trust very little that's on the internet,
Oh, right.
and so we tend to go for print
Mhm.
magazines and books, and and actual interviews with people,
Right.
because I just, as a last resort, we use the internet as sort of a pointer.
Mhm.
It points you in certain directions, but we don't really trust anything on the internet because what'll happen is the fans, somebody will make up a fact or make up a fiction that sounds plausible. It sounds
Mhm.
plausible, you know. It's something that might have happened, but it didn't happen. And and because it's interesting, it'll get, especially if it has to do with, you know, sex, drugs, rock and roll, you know, if it has to do with something spicy,
Yeah,
it'll get mentioned um and repeated 100 times
yeah,
on various websites, and then it'll become fact, even though it's still not fact, but it'll become fact because it's been mentioned so many times on so many websites,
yeah.
and so that's why we don't trust the internet.
No, I
Um,
understand completely. I do. Well, I don't have unlimited time, unfortunately. They're telling me I need to wrap it up. So I really appreciate you talking to me today.
sure. Thank you for talking to me.
All right, and good luck with your October things and all the other things that you do. I know you do still do stand up and other you do shows and things. So